If you ever feel like life's happening too fast and you've got no time to cry, you're in the right place. Hello and welcome back to another episode of No Time to Cry. Oh, where do we start? It's been an interesting couple of weeks. So when I'm recording this, the first episode has come out. The second episode isn't out just yet. I'm having to record this ahead of time because I have just gone on holiday to Dubai. So when this comes out, I will be back, I think. But I have surprised my nan for her 70th birthday. So I will hopefully share a little bit of content around that as well. So she wanted to celebrate her 70th birthday in Dubai because she's just the most glamorous nan ever. And she's been having a little bit of a hard time recently, and I thought it would be good to surprise her and come out there. There's some other family there as well, so hopefully I've come back and I've had an amazing time and this has all gone out. But I thought I'm not really going to have time to record and edit before I go. So you've enjoyed the first episode, I know that, because I've had some incredible feedback. Episode 2 is going out the day that I fly. And then I'm recording this one a little bit ahead of time. But I hope you are enjoying Feb already. I hope that you've settled into 2026 really well. I think it's been one of those starts to the year where it's felt a little bit turbulent even still. And I've come into 2026 with a slightly different mindset actually. I'm wanting to change my lifestyle is what I would say. And that's what this episode's going to be about. So 2 of the episodes so far, we obviously had the comeback, where have I been, what's been going on. Episode 2 was a request from a number of different listeners and people that I'm in contact with on a regular basis, essentially wanting to talk about hormones. I haven't had the result of my blood test back yet, guys, so hopefully by the time we get to the 4th episode of the new season that I'll be able to give you an update. And this episode in particular, I touched on it on the first one around some changes that I've made coming into 2026 just on the back of a really difficult year. I'm wanting to change my mindset, wanting to have a different process in how I manage my lifestyle. And that all kicked off with a vision board. Now, I know that that's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. And I'll be honest, it's never really been mine. It's never been something that I've considered doing before. I don't want to say it's a bit woo-woo because I don't think that's completely true, but I've never really felt the need. I've never really done New Year's resolutions. I've never really had an idea of, I want to come in and make some severe changes this year. I want to manifest this, manifest that. That has never really been me. So I want to just preface that in saying, like, if you have joined this podcast and you also have those thoughts and feelings where you feel, oh God, what the hell is she talking about, vision board? Realistically, all it is setting yourself objectives, setting yourself some really good habits and objectives to improve your lifestyle. And when you've had a bit of a difficult year or things are feeling a little bit out of control, it's like I've said before on the previous episode, being an adult's an absolute sham. We never have all of our stuff together. But actually, if I can try and set some things out that are going to help me get some of that together and help me rest my mind, that's kind of how I want it to come into 2026. So we'll go through some of the habits, changes, what I've done so far with, when I'm recording this, it's literally the 1st of Feb today. So I'm just under a month in. And I think it's really important to say, I know we're in Feb, I know the year's already started. Actually, it's not too late to sit down and go, what do I want out of this year? You're 1 month done. You've got the whole year ahead of you and the rest of your life, obviously. It just put me in a really positive mindset, even though this year hasn't necessarily started in the best way. I know I mentioned on the first episode, I'm at risk of redundancy. As I mentioned before, my nan's had a couple of health scares that we're waiting on results for. So it's not been the best start, but I haven't felt as maybe weighed down by those sort of things as I previously would have. And I'm trying to get a control over that anxiety, a control over, well, what am I in control of? What is in the realms of me being able to have an impact on? And then have a look and go, right, okay, if I'm not in control of it, what am I in control of? And I'm a really creative person as well. So doing the writing of like putting everything down, but then being able to create something physical to look at, something that allowed me to get some of that creativity out, it actually really helped. I'm not going to lie. And I hope you guys get something from this. Even if you don't decide to do a vision board and you don't decide to go through the process of everything that I did, having a think about it and even just putting some different habits in place is still going to have a positive impact, even if you don't go through the full process. So, like I've said before, let's get stuck into it. Let's have a chat kind of where it started. I know I've been doing like a TikTok of the week, and I normally do that later towards the end of the episode, but actually it's a perfect point to start on, because it was a TikTok that inspired me to do the vision board. I watched a TikTok from a creator called Grace Beverley. Now, some of you may, if you're online and stuff like that, you might recognize the brand Tala, which is like a gym wear brand. And she is the creator of Tala. She's an entrepreneur. She has her own podcast as well. And I'll be honest, I don't particularly follow her content. She's not someone that I've been following for a really long time and watch every episode of her podcast or watch everything that she posts on TikTok, but she does often come up on my TikTok feed, and she talks a lot of sense. She's very commercially minded, which is very similar to myself and how I've kind of run my career. So although I've never done vision boards, I've always had goals that I've wanted to hit and achievements that I've wanted to do. So a lot of the time when she talks, and I mean, she's done some impressive things if you want to look her up in terms of her career and what she's built at her age. But there was a specific TikTok that she did where essentially she shared the process from beginning to end, from the start of the day to the end of the day, of how she does a vision board. And this is something that she's been doing for years and feels like it has helped her achieve those goals. So when she looks at her vision board at the end of the year, she's brought things into her life that she never thought would happen, but she had a vision of it at the beginning of the year. And I feel like when people talk about manifesting, I've listened to a couple of people talk about manifesting. And again, I've never been that into it in terms of like, talk this into your universe, you talk, actually that still requires actions. You can't just say, I want to be a millionaire, I want to be a millionaire, without changing or doing anything to get you there. Really, all manifesting is making changes in your life that allow you to get closer to your goals and allow you to make those kind of daily steps that get you closer to what you want to achieve. And she just laid it out in the most impressive way in being able to follow it. And I just thought to myself, I haven't had the best year in 2025. That wasn't because of necessarily things that have happened. I had really positive things that have happened. Noah spoke to that on episode 1, but I didn't feel like I had what I needed to succeed in the year in terms of my mindset, looking after my health, looking after my mental health. I probably do a lot more than others in terms of those spaces, but yeah, I still didn't feel like I did everything that I needed to have a really good year. And I didn't want a repeat of that, to be honest. I feel like my anxiety was the worst that it had been in a couple of years. I used to really suffer with my anxiety when I first moved up north, which was about 10 years ago now. And I'd gone a really, really long time without suffering with my anxiety. And although it wasn't anywhere near as bad as it was when I was younger, it had crept back in, and it's the worst that it had been in a long time. Like, I had a couple of panic attacks last year, which I haven't had in a really, really long time. And I was just like, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing it. I don't want another year where I'm going to be worried about things and worrying about things that I can't control. But also at the point when I did the vision board, I knew about my kind of redundancy options and that I was going to have that risk. I felt it was a great time to say, I need to think about my career. I need to think about what I want out of my career. But actually, I've always been very career driven, and I still am, but I need a career now that fits my lifestyle, whereas my lifestyle previously has always been driven by my career. Now, for me to look after myself, my mindset, my family, my friends, my career needs to reflect what I need and want for myself. And doing this process helped me do that, because I've previously thrown myself into situations where it possibly has fed on how quickly my brain can go. So rather than me maybe calming down some of those symptoms of, as I say, ADHD, PTSD, CPTSD, I've used it to feed into my career and to push myself and to push the companies that I've worked with forward. I think it's been really good for me. It's allowed me to achieve some really impressive career goals at a very young age. I don't think it has always been the best for my mental health, if I'm being completely honest. It's allowed me to maybe feed bad habits that I have, to not take into consideration the impact of someone that is that high energy, that super focused, and then flipping elsewhere, the kind of experience that has for other people as well when they're around you, including my partner, my family. And it's just been a really reflective year for me. Maybe it's approaching 30. I'm 30 this year. Maybe it's the fact that I've had a difficult year. I don't know really what's made me change coming into this year. And it has felt like a shift already. I know it's only been sort of when this comes out, it would have been a full month. But I have really felt a shift. And a lot of that's been fed by those kind of daily habits that I've implemented. But I had my first therapy session of the year, and even my therapist has said, wow, I can't believe the kind of shift in your mindset. And even, I'm very early days in trying to make those shifts, but I'm in a complete different headspace to what I was prior to Christmas. So if I can share this and it helps anybody else get into that mindset, and if you're one of my close friends, you already know I've told you need to do this. I did it with my stepson as well, who is going to college this year. He's coming out of high school or secondary school and going into college, and that's a real transitioning point. And he found it really helpful as well in trying to understand, what does he want from a college course, but also he's about to become an adult. He's turning 17 this year. Where does he want the start of his adulthood life to go towards? And I think it's really interesting, because I would have enjoyed doing that at his age, but I didn't really have anybody to give me that direction. I was already working at his age. And I think it's when you're 17 or 18 or 16, 17, 18, you're made to feel like you have to have absolutely everything worked out. And a big part of doing this process with him was actually saying, you don't need to have it all worked out. I'm nearly 30. I still don't have it all worked out. But if I have an idea of what I want, then this is giving me the stepping stones of how I get there. And I might not have all the ideas. I might not know exactly what I want. And that might be an action for me this year, is to try and suss out what's in my heart, what's in my mind, what is influencing me in some of the decisions that I make. Is it ego-led? Is it led by other people's assumptions? Is it led by other people's expectations? Why am I doing things? Am I doing it for me and my people, or am I doing it because this is how I've previously felt value in myself? So it's been monumental, essentially. I can't actually give it enough kind of dues, and I appreciate Grace for sharing her process, because I think it's really difficult to say, and I'll link the video and I'll do a little post on Instagram and stuff and tagging it, but I think when I've heard people talk about vision boards before, it was just like, oh, put everything that you want onto a pretty picture on Canva or Pinterest or whatever. And this was so much more than that. It was like, what have been your achievements in the year, which was really gratifying for me because I don't often reflect on what's gone well. I have a really bad habit of going, okay, well, what's next? Rather than what have I achieved and how do I celebrate that? I'm like, okay, yeah, I've achieved it. Tick the box. Off I go. I do that in therapy as well. Oh, you have to pay for that now. Move on. You've got to go back and go, I'm really proud of myself. I did this and I'm trying to do a bit more of that. But there was lots of questions that you ask yourself in terms of that process. So what have you achieved this year? What went well? What didn't go as well? What do you think could have gone better? What do you want out of this year? What does your ideal life look like? So many different questions. And within her recommendations, she puts time in there to go for a walk, have some time to sit out and have a think about it, rather than just going, okay, I want this, I want that, I want to have a nice car, I want to fly here. Well, why do you want that? Why do you want those things? What does it mean for you? Is it because of status? Because that might not be a good reason to have that in your vision board. Or is it something that you want to achieve and something that brings kind of power to yourself? I think we have to look at that at some point as human beings, like, why are we doing what we do? And so often we're doing it for other people. You're buying that bag because someone's told you it's popular. You're doing that job because someone told you you'd be really good at it. But is it really what you want out of life? I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit reflective coming into this year, but the world's a crazy place at the moment. It's a really, really crazy place. And I think if I'm going to take it a little bit deep in terms of media, what's going on in the news, what's happening across the world, obviously some really devastating stuff happening in 2025 and into 2026. And I think it's really important to have your own mind and sense of opinion and what you want in life and what you stand by morally, and not just led by information that's on like the biggest news outlets and stuff like that. I think it's really important to stand by your own morals, what you believe in life. And that's a big thing that I wanted to concentrate on this year, as well as why do I feel the way that I do? Why do I care about certain things? Why do I have the emotional attachment to certain parts of my life? I don't know. It's just been reflective and it's made me think differently, and it's been really good for me. So at the end of the session, before you start like doing all your pretty photos and stuff, and I decided to do mine on Pinterest and then make a Canva kind of wallpaper that's on the back of my phone and my screens and stuff like that, so that every day I can look at it and remind myself. But before that, you kind of write everything down. That's the last thing that you do. And I had 7 areas. It was career and business, relationships, personal development, finances, mindset and attitude, health, and then I had habits, which kind of built into those. So rather than an objective, it was like a daily habit that would maybe help me, support me in hitting those objectives. So I'm not going to tell you necessarily word for word what I put in mine, because I think it's super personal, and you're not necessarily going to relate to some of the objectives, but I'll give you a bit of an idea around each section and what I decided to concentrate on. So it was about being driven, but being mindful of the other areas and not putting one above the other, or not contradicting myself, shall I say. So in career, for instance, I've got some things in there around starting a new role, which I kind of have to do anyway, but it being in an area that I am passionate about. And then I've put my key areas of passion, so that whether that be mental health, fashion, travel, whatever, I want to do something that I care about. And that might be that actually for myself, I get some of that from the podcast stuff that I'm doing, but I'd really like it to be part of my main career, because I do think it's important to have a job that doesn't just kind of tick a box in terms of your bank balance, but also is meaningful to you. And I do a lot in my current company around mental health and being chair for our one of our employee networks, which is around disability and mental health. And that has been one of the best things I have done in my whole entire career. It's been one of the most fulfilling roles that I've ever done. It's alongside my day job, but I've felt so much passion and taken so much of my personal time towards it because I care about it. So if I can do something like that, but make it my full-time job, then I would love that. So that's one of the objectives that I've set myself. But also there's some kind of personal ones in there around creativity. I like to paint and draw as well, which is something I've not done in the last year. So is there anything I can be doing on the side of what I'm doing that feeds into some of those hobbies? These are all things that I want to work out. I'm 1 month in. I haven't got it all worked out yet, but I'm using this year as a starting point from my career moving forward and doing things that I want to do and working for companies and doing jobs that I find moral kind of comfort in, or I have similar views and values to. And that's not to say the company that I work for now, that isn't the case, but I've been given a great opportunity to reflect and look at that and say, is there other things, or is there other jobs within that company, or is there jobs outside of that company that might be a better fit? Or is there a company that I want to start that might be a better fit to me personally? That's one of the things that I want to take a look at this year. Relationships. So this year, if you bloody haven't heard me talk about it already, I'm getting married. And Jamie and I have done a really great job over the last, we've been together 11 years. And I would say in the last 5 years, our communication has improved every single year. We've got closer and closer and closer. And that's not to say the first 5 years were bad. It was just, we were both really young. I got with Jamie when I was 18. And I think from the point of sort of hitting that later years of my 20s and getting into therapy, it's just improved our relationship. And that's something I've said that I want to continue focus on. Especially around emotions and how I share that. I don't do a great job of opening up when I'm not in the best of mindsets or headspace. And I think I've spoke to that a little bit on a previous episode. But actually, you know, that's a really big part of who I am as a person. And it's a little bit selfish for me to keep that from him, because that's a part of me that I know he loves, because he's been there for me in some of the most difficult times where I wasn't in a position to not ask for help, like when I lost my dad. I've spoke to that before, that actually at that time it made me love him even more, that he was able to be there for me. So I don't know why I have this kind of blanket headspace of wanting to deal with things on my own and just kind of getting where I need to be on my own with as little support as possible. It's not healthy, and I should allow my friends and my partner to be there for me. So I'm working on it. It's one of the objectives for this year. Another one is about our wedding and making sure that our wedding is something that represents both Jamie and I. We're doing stuff for us for the wedding rather than what we think people would expect of us and want from us. And we're planning it around our wants and needs and how we want to spend our day together. And then spending some more time with family and friends and checking in with them and dedicating time to check in with them. And that's not because I don't care about them enough that it just comes naturally to me, but actually because I have got such a busy head, I do often just reach out to people when I have time, which doesn't feel intentional enough for me. And I want to be more intentional. And it's interesting that I was going through some of this with my therapist, and she said, it sounds like what I'm trying to do this year is build connection and have connection in everything that I do. And perhaps I felt like I was missing that connection last year. And that's not necessarily with individuals, but just in general, like I've felt slightly removed or not as close to things that I enjoy and people that I love. And I'm trying to intentionally do that in 2026. Personal development, there's a little bits around qualifications in there, public speaking events, which I've done before and I enjoy doing. And I want that to be something that I continue to do. relaunch the podcast, what's in there, and then some goals around that and what I want to achieve with the podcast, and basically not ditching it was the main one. Finances, again, there's some bits in there about savings. I want to sell a piece of original art, which I've sold my art before, but it's always been commissioned and what people have asked me for. I'd love to create some really original pieces this year and be able to sell them. There's some bits in there around kind of just what I want in terms of my financial situation. And then mindset and attitude. And this was a massive one for me. And this was about spending time sitting with my emotions, understanding what helps me feel better, having a tidier home. And that's just not, it's not to say that my house isn't tidy, but I feel better when things are organised. And I've obviously spent last year decorating, not having a very organised home, not having rooms that are set up. And luckily we have been in a better place of that because we've put the tools down on decorating. But I want to make a commitment that I don't jump into anything else like that this year, because I need a bit of a reset. I need a bit of a shift before I commit back to tearing my house apart again. So again, there's some bits in there about wellness and just stuff I want to dedicate time to that helps my mindset and attitude. And I think that's really important if you're wanting to feel more calm and feel more present. And I certainly felt like I needed that because I've just not been that way so far. And then health, and this really feeds back into last week. So I committed to myself essentially to go to the doctors around my periods and my menstrual cycle and what's going on with that. I've made some commitments around the gym. I've made some commitments around health and sleep. So I'm a terrible sleeper. Some of you will know I've been like that since a baby. I don't sleep a lot. I don't need a lot of sleep to function, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't be getting it. So I've tried to set some really bedtimes. I'm a nearly 30-year-old woman and I'm having to set myself bedtimes, but that's kind of where we're at, guys. Without the bedtimes, I just get little to no sleep. So I'm setting times that I get up every morning, whether that be the weekend or in the week, and times I go to bed, to essentially make sure that I'm trying to get at least 7 hours sleep each night, because I was miles off that. And that's something I've really, really stuck to so far this year, and I've kind of fed into my habits. So I've got a daily checklist of stuff. Spending time with the rabbits is another big one, because it helps me find peace, it helps me feel better. And I suppose it's again that being intentional and having that connection. Those are my babies, my fur babies, right? Which I know cringes some people out, but sorry, it's the truth. I never feel as at peace as when I am kind of just sat with them in their room, chilling out, talking to them, which again, I know sounds weird, but they are my pets and part of my family. And since we moved house, I just wasn't doing it because we didn't have the time. And that's a big reason why I felt like I wasn't maybe in the right headspace, because I wasn't giving myself any time in the day to just sit, not be on my phone, not be on, worrying about what I'm doing next, or painting, or trying to run from the gym to then do this, to then do that. I literally just didn't have time to sit still. And I've realized I need that time. I need that time to be still. I need that time to decompress. I am what they call an extroverted introvert. So I am outwardly extroverted in terms of my approach, my conversation. It'd be really easy for people to just assume I'm extroverted, but I don't get my energy from other people. I get it from having kind of rest, time on my own, time to recalibrate. And I was missing that time, and I just was burnt out. I was burnt out from having to be present, smile, constantly. Do you want a cup of tea? Do you want this? And then in work, same again, too many meetings, constantly talking, but no time to reset and actually think and use my brain. You just can't do that. You've got to give yourself an opportunity to rest. And if you are an extrovert and that is where you get your energy, then it's really important that you do those things. But there's still a limit to it. You've got to be able to allow yourself to process experiences. And I know previously, Laura and I had touched on kind of the feelings of anxiety that I'd had. And a lot of that was around not allowing myself to sit and actually understand what my emotions were. So it was really easy just to say, oh, I feel anxious. Actually, maybe I feel frustrated. Maybe I feel tired. Maybe I feel sad. Maybe I feel angry. Maybe I just feel like I've got, no gas in the tank. But because I wasn't giving myself time to sit and go, how am I feeling today? Like, today's been a big day. How am I feeling about it? Then it kind of wraps itself in that ball of anxiety in the pit of my stomach, which is not a place that I want to be. So I've been spending time each day, sitting with my emotions, doing some exercises that kind of allow me to release with some meditation music. I've been reading books before bed, having half an hour away from my phone before I go to sleep. And I'm just feeling a lot more positive. I feel well rested. I feel in a good mindset. It's given me really good clarity for what I want for my career. And that's still an overwhelming kind of feeling that I've got at the moment, something that I need to think about. I'm very logical. I lay things out in a very logical way. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm thinking about that more logically in terms of what are my wants and needs rather than what can I just give to a business. And we will talk about that a bit more on another episode, because I had a request recently around talking about mental health in the workplace, which is a huge passion of mine and something I talk about a lot in my career and in my role as chair for that network. So we will come back to what that looks like and what that can look like and how you can put a company above your own mental health a lot of times. And at the end of the day, if you leave that company, they'll forget about you quite quickly, but your mental health could be damaged for quite some time. So I think it's really important to make sure that you have some really clear boundaries at home, but also at work. And again, that's something that I'm pushing more so for myself this year as well, and making sure that I'm making decisions for me, not for what is good for my colleagues, good for the business I work for. Still part of the process of thinking about, but I'm wanting to be, I don't want to even say selfish, because I don't think it's selfish to put yourself first in your career. I think I've been quite selfless previously in work, and now is the time for me to go, okay, well, what do I want? What do I need? So yeah, I will share my vision board. I will put it on Instagram for you guys to see, and I'll clip it and put it on here, because I think, the visuals don't give too much away, but they're really pretty, and it's a good, I was really proud of it when I put it together, and I took the time to properly put it together and made sure that every single thing that I wanted to achieve this year had a visual connected to it. And I just think it's nice to see. And then when we get to kind of this time next year, we'll see what I've been able to stick to. I'm giving myself some grace as well, because I feel like you should do this because it's important to you. So you don't want to berate yourself or feel guilty for not doing certain things. So for instance, last night I didn't sleep too well. So I went to bed at the right time, but I kept waking up, going back to sleep. Rather than saying, I'm still going to get up at 7 a.m. this morning, I just got up at 7:30 instead, because I hadn't had enough sleep. And I think as much as getting up at 7 and having that routine is good, actually the hours of sleep is probably a little bit more important. So I don't feel bad for that, because I slept half an hour longer, because it's made me feel better, fresher, ready to go today. So there's certain things that I'm setting myself each day that are more of a, what am I doing today? Because that works for me in terms of having a plan and is one of my daily habits. But if I don't tick everything off on that list, I'm not going to feel bad about it. I'm just going to put it on the list for tomorrow. So I think it's important to have balance in it as well. So don't feel bad if you don't tick every single box. As long as your intentions are good and you're trying, that's kind of the whole point of this. It's not to tick a box and say, yeah, I achieved everything, because maybe you've not challenged yourself enough. If you're easily able to achieve every single thing on your vision board, I think your vision board should be difficult. It should be challenging yourself. It should be pushing you to do something you wouldn't normally do or wouldn't predict for yourself to easily do this year. But yeah, so I'll share it. And if you do it and it doesn't look as, like it should be on the front of a magazine, or I think mine's quite aesthetic, but that's just because that's how I wanted it. It doesn't have to be. It can be messy. It can be whatever you want it to be. But I think it's really important to have a visual. I know a friend of mine is wanted to do one and said, actually, I'm going to print out the pictures and cut it out and stick it and have it somewhere for me to see. It's whatever's right for you. And kind of on Grace's TikTok, she talks to that in terms of do the hard work with the paper. Don't just do the pretty vision board and then kind of go, right, I'm sorted. Write everything down and then do, if you want to do it online, if you want to do it kind of in person, that's up to you because it's yours. But make sure that you do the hard bit as well as the fun bit. And maybe the fun bit might actually be the writing. Maybe for you, pictures and stuff like that aren't as exciting. And I know I was listening to a podcast of Grace's actually when I was doing my vision board on one of my breaks, and there was a woman on there that she had on, and she was saying actually her vision board is just a list of bullet points. She doesn't have any pretty pictures attached to it. She just has her goals and they're bullet pointed out. So that might be the best way for you to do it. It's completely up to you and it's yours. There was one thing I didn't do last week. I did it on episode 1 and I didn't do it on episode 2 of the return, but I want to do it on this episode, and that's kind of having a closing thought. So this is me already saying I wanted a strict kind of what works for the podcast, what's the process. I'm going to have the same format every week. Week 2 I already missed something off. If that isn't the epitome of how my brain works, I don't know what it is. But I was thinking about a quote in terms of like finishing it on a quote of the week, and I saw something because I always say, I think on episode 1, I was like, I don't have all of my ducks in a row. I don't think anybody does. I think it's a bloody scam when people say that you hit a certain point in your life and you've just got all your shit together. And this quote basically says, stop worrying about having your ducks in a row. They don't need to be in a row. They just need to be in the same pond. And I feel like 2026, the whole point of me talking about the vision board and talking about what I've done so far is me trying to get what I want out of life into that pond. It's not about having it perfectly lined up. It's not about having it exactly how I want it to be. And that's the same way I've spoke about my goals and not berating myself if I don't hit everything, but also for yourself, if you're planning to do it not having to look perfect, it not having to be this really glamorous thing that you can share on your Instagram or because it's personal. And as long as you're working towards the things that you want out of life, whatever that looks like, whether you want to call it a vision board or you want to call it something else, trying is kind of what matters. And it's not about perfecting it. It's just about doing things for yourself and for those around you and making sure that you're getting out of life what you want. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will link the TikTok that I followed to do my vision board. Again, don't worry about the fact that it's Feb, or if you listen to this in March or you listen to this in April, who gives a shit that you're starting your vision board later on in the year? Doesn't matter. You can turn your life around whenever you want. Jan is just a good time to do it because it's reflected. Maybe you've had a break over Christmas. You've had time to think. It doesn't really matter. You can change your life whenever you want to because it's your fucking life. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope it's something slightly different. Next week, we'll have a different topic. And I'm really enjoying being back. I'm loving hearing from you all. I'm loving hearing the suggestions and what you want me to talk about. So please make sure you do that. And if you haven't already, please make sure you follow us on any of the platforms that we're on. I'm not going to beg, but it does help us out. So if you could, big love. Follow, subscribe, like. See you all soon.